Welcome back to this week's edition of the Main Street TV Local Sports Break. Hi, I'm your host, Ralph Miranda. Today, we're going to visit with Coach Derek Hunt, the head football coach of the Maryville Rebels. We're going to talk about their big win over Heritage last Friday night, 63-14. Good execution by the offense, excellent execution on defense, and a big win over a team that, as we talked about last week, was much improved from past Heritage football teams. We'll talk a little bit about some of the standout players. Lots of young players got their first start on Friday night for the Maryville Rebels, and a lot of guys stepped up. We'll talk about some of the key players, some of the key happenings in that game, and some of the guys that stood out the most. And then we'll move on to this week's game, their home opener against the Knoxville Central Bobcats. Knoxville Central, a team that Maryville's very familiar with, having played them many times in the playoffs back in the early 2000s, now, of course, in different classifications. But the Bobcats with a big 53-20 win over Fulton last Friday night. Very athletic football team, very aggressive football team, and it'll present a challenge for Maryville on Friday night. So all that and more on this week's edition of the Main Street TV Local Sports Break, and we'll be right back. Okay, welcome back to the Main Street TV Local Sports Break. We're joined again by Coach Derek Hunt, the head coach of the Maryville Rebels. And Coach, nice win last Friday night, 63-14 if I have my score right, but a big victory over Heritage. Take us a little bit through that game. And I know last week when we talked about how Heritage was much improved. We talked about their coach saying, well, we know what Maryville's going to do. We just have to execute. So take us through that game and how it got started and how it got on such a roll for you guys.
Yeah, well, we opened with a touchdown drive, which is, always a big deal for us when you can get ahead early.
Right.
So we took the ball and scored, and, that gives us confidence. I think defensively, it probably took us a couple drives to get used to what they're doing. They're doing a lot of stuff that Coach Heupel does at the University of Tennessee as far as the tempo and the reads at receiver that they're doing. And they have a really good quarterback. He's a special player. Deck is his name. And so he's tough, physical, smart. He has a lot of grit. So they do a good job. I think they definitely put us in some binds early. And, fortunately, we were able to make some big plays right there at the end of the first half to capitalize on, some chances that we had. We returned a kick. They scored. They scored to make it, I think 14-7 is what it was. And then they kicked it off, and we ran it back for a touchdown, and then got the ball back, got a defensive stop, and scored with less than 15 seconds to go to kind of break it open. And then, in the second half, I really felt like we started to execute, and some of our guys who were a little big-eyed at the start of the game because it's their first start, I think kind of settled in a little bit, and that was really good to see.
Yeah, we talked about this last week. I don't care how many scrimmages you have or jamborees you have. It's not quite the same as when the lights come on Friday night and you have to play 4 quarters, right?
That's right. Exactly right. Yeah.
All right. So take us through offense. What are some of the things that you felt you did well offensively, and what are some of the things maybe that you need to work on for next week?
So things that we did well is we were pretty efficient. I think Casey Cobble was 8 for 8 in the passing game, and Graham threw it 6 times, and we made some big plays in the passing game. And so the key for us is can we be balanced? And I think Friday night we showed that we could. If they're going to commit extra hats to the box to stop the run game, especially when we're in 2 tight end sets. I think we want to be able to throw the ball still out of those sets, and we did that. And one of them was for a touchdown, and that was huge because if, like I said, when you're going to commit that many to the box and we can play pass and get behind guys with a tight end or whatever, that's a big deal, because you have to respect that you see that on film as a defensive play caller, you've got to be ready for that. So
right.
that was really good for us to see. Things that we get better at is, our conditioning was not as what it needs to be, especially early in the year when it's hot.
Right.
We had some guys, get really fatigued early on. And what that causes, Ralph, as you know, is you don't execute as well. You miss a block, we had a couple guys with meat, a guy lined up right on him, and then we weren't able to block them, maybe mid-second quarter when that tiredness starts to kick in. I thought we were better after halftime, but, that initial burst, I think we made a couple poor decisions in the backfield, and then missed some missed some tackles that we shouldn't miss, stuff like that from our conditioning standpoint.
Right. Let's talk about your defense. I watched some of the film, not all of it, obviously, but I was impressed with, I thought your secondary played very well as far as how they, kept their assignments and how they attacked, what they were supposed to attack. I thought your front four did a pretty good job of putting pressure on the quarterback at some time. So overall, I thought your defensive effort was excellent. Now, tell me a little bit about, what you saw and what you need to work on for next week.
Yeah, I think our secondary did a good job of keeping it in front of them.
Right.
You're making them make plays. And certainly they found some holes, especially on one drive in the second half, underneath us. But at the same time, we were able to rally and tackle and, don't let a first down become a touchdown.
Right.
I thought one thing I was pleased with was our depth at the D-line. I think we played a total of 8 guys on the D-line, kind of with that first group.
Right.
And what that allowed us to do was stay fresh. And then, like you said, get pressure on the quarterback. And, and we made some crucial plays, to get a hit to get a hit in the end zone and fall on one. Anytime you do that, your chances of winning just increase exponentially. A defensive touchdown or a special teams touchdown, and we had 3 of them. So
exactly,
you feel really good about that. But defensively, like you said, I felt like our guys ran to the ball.
Yeah, they did.
We just got fatigued. And when you get tired and you don't focus and you're not able to tackle as well and line up, and so we played hard certainly. But we learned we're going to continue to have to play a lot of bodies.
Right.
And the guys who can't come out, like at linebacker, we need to get in better shape.
Yeah. What did Vince Lombardi say? Fatigue makes cowards of us all.
Exactly. That's perfect way to describe it because it's so true.
It's very true. Exactly. Another exciting feature that we'll be unveiling on our Main Street TV local sports break is the question of the week. Each week, we'll be choosing one question submitted by you, our viewers, to ask Coach Hunt. To submit your questions, subscribe to Main Street TV on YouTube and comment on this or any other of our local sports break videos, or follow us on Facebook or Instagram and comment on any of our local sports break posts. Then tune in each week, Thursdays at 7 p.m. on our Main Street TV YouTube channel to catch the new episode and maybe hear your question asked on the air. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about your players. Give me some guys that I know you had a lot of guys that were making their first start, and then you had others that were more experienced. But talk to me a little bit about some of the guys that you were really impressed with who really stood out for you last Friday night.
Yes. So starting, on offense, tight end, I thought Eli Elkins played phenomenal.
He did, yeah. He did.
Even in the blocking, in the blocking game where the average fan's not going to notice, but I thought he had a great night, and it's really good to see out of a senior who has worked so hard and has had the last 2 seasons kind of taken from him with a knee. So that was phenomenal to see. I thought we made some plays at receiver as well. Even some of our quick screens and quick passes and the now screens, we were catching it and bursting and getting 6, 7, 8 yards, which was huge to see. We had guys at receiver battling on the perimeter blocking. And so when a run would bounce or if it was a jet, we got what was there because we had guys, doing pretty well.
Right.
Defensively, I thought some of our D linemen stood out for sure. Jonah Arms made some plays when he was in there at defense at the nose. We also had guys like Lucas Garman, number 99, huge. He's never played a down of football in his life until this year. Yeah, he's a basketball player.
Yeah.
But he came out this year, and I mean, that was the first time he's ever stepped on the football field. And he's still got a long way to go of knowing what to do.
Right.
But what I like about Lucas is he knows, hey, listen, I'm big. I'm going to bull rush.
Right.
He got his hands up, and I think he knocked down 2 or 3 balls.
Right.
So that's a problem, you know.
Yeah,
you
it
can
is.
take away a throwing lane for a quarterback, and he also fell on the fumble in the end zone after, Caleb Reeves knocked the quarterback down. So I thought, that I was really excited to see, hey, some of these young guys who hadn't played very much are going to be able to help us.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. And health-wise, I mean, I know everybody gets nicked up and down, but I mean, health-wise, how did you turn out of that game health-wise?
Yeah, I mean, the worst kept secret in Maryville now is Gage Ledoux, know, and he it's confirmed he broke his leg, and so I really, really hate that for him. I'm just heartbroken,
Yeah, of course he was. Yeah.
Nobody's worked as hard as Gage. He was a fantastic leader for us and still will be.
Exactly.
Because he's not leaving.
Right.
I think there's a small chance he comes back this year. Everything will have to go right from a surgery and recovery perspective.
Sure.
And we'll have to hold up our end of the deal and be able to make a playoff run.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Because I don't see him coming back regular season. So, I think, we'll see how it goes. It's really hard to say if he'll come back, but obviously he's going to miss a lot of time, if not the rest of the season.
Yeah.
And I just hate it for him because he's just such a special kid, and I love him so much, and our team loves him so much. So hate that for him. We definitely had some other bumps and bruises, but nothing that serious. So we should be able to get ready to go. And Ralph, is especially at Maryville, it's always been next man up. And we've had this happen last year with our starting running back and probably our best player in Noah Vaughn. And, here comes Gage Ledoux, all he did was rush for 1,000 yards in 6 games, we'll have some guys step up. Price Davis will move back to running back. And, I feel really confident about what we can do.
And I know one of your, probably yesterday, since it was the first day of practice of the week, but maybe today. I know one of your talks, and we've talked about this, is, obviously adversity defines a lot of your character, right? So not only for the young man who got hurt, how he responds to it, but your football team. I mean, I'm sure Gage was a leader, and there's probably a little bit of doubt that creeps into the minds of your players. Hey, we lost one of our best players. So how have you sensed that after the first day, and maybe some of the reaction of how your team is going to handle this adversity?
Yeah, it's been hard to tell just yet. I mean, yesterday, was kind of a slower day and an install and kind of watch film. We'll learn a lot more today.
Right.
Tuesday practice or work practice. But we talked about it last night. We talked about it at the end of the day. People are going to have to step up and lead and really lead with urgency. Gage was not a rah-rah guy, but he went so hard in practice. Like, he lifted the level of everybody around him, and that's what you want from your seniors, and so. But we've got guys who can do that. We've still got guys on this team. They're just going to have to decide to, it's my turn. I'm gonna be ready to go.
Right. All right, let's move on to next week's game, or to this week's game, I should say. Your home opener against Knox Central. Central Bobcats, a former state champion a few years back, but in the playoffs the last couple of years, and they had a big win Friday night over Fulton, 53-20. Yep. What are your initial thoughts about Central? I know you've probably watched some film on them already, but obviously you haven't practiced yet. But give me your initial thoughts on the Central Bobcats coming in there.
Yeah, well, first of all, I have a lot of respect for Coach Nick Craney. I mean, he was the defensive coordinator on those state championship teams and still is very involved defensively, even as the head coach. And he does a phenomenal job. Number one, as a defensive coach, he's really, really good. And then number two, as a character builder in his program. I mean, he focuses on that a lot, and the things that he does for those kids is super impressive. They are super athletic.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see a lot more athletes this week. Speed,
Mm-hmm.
you know. I obviously I felt like we had the speed advantage last week. I don't think that we'll have the speed advantage this week. They have a running back who is probably 220 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
He's a load,
Mm-hmm.
really good player, and so they lean on him. But then against Fulton, they were able to make a lot more plays in the passing game than expected. Yeah. And so when you see that, man, we're going to have to be ready to go. We're going to have to obviously. One of the things that they do is they'll throw it deep, a lot. And so, and not that Heritage didn't throw it deep. I think they would have liked to, but again, we were trying to keep them in front of us. And so, can we do that against Fulton and still be able to stop the run? Can we still commit enough guys to the box to stop, one of their best players, if not their best player? So that'll be key for us. And then, on the other side of the ball, they're so athletic, on the back end. We've got it. Like I said, again, we're going to have to be able to try to find a way to create that balance.
Yeah, I watched some of the film on them, and I agree with you. Athletic, speed, aggressiveness. I mean, their defense very aggressive, and I think maybe that's something that you probably could use against them a little bit with misdirection. But which leads me kind of into my next question is, I know, you guys do what you do. You have a basic set and a basic game plan of what you do well, but how much will you tweak maybe what you do one week from the next? Because a lot of these teams run the same type of defenses and the same type of offenses, unless you face a wing T. So how do you go about making those adjustments after you watch a film? Is it just a matter of different plays, different sets, or how does the coaching staff go about doing that?
Well, so there's a few different factors that I think are the most important. Number one, when you lose one of your better players, and then things kind of shift around. So now you got to consider, all right, who's in and what are they good at? Right. And how does that fit into what we do? Right. Because in high school, you don't get to pick and choose who's playing for you. Right. Kids that grew up and were born in Maryville 16, 17 years ago. So, so anyway, we've got to adjust to who we are within what we do. So that's the first variable. The second variable is, while you might see some of the similar defenses, it's not the same kids. So, correct. So they may have, stronger linebackers or stronger corners or D-line, so what do you think? We look at it and say, hey, where is our advantage at this week? Right. And so you kind of we look at our menu of plays and schemes and choose from what we think, gives us the most chance to be successful, with at the same time considering who's touching the football for us, and so when you put all those things together, that's kind of how you form a game plan. And there's always going to be different nuances to how we're blocking something. It may look the same to the naked eye, but there's always going to be some changes and some different schemes that maybe we didn't do last week, or a formation or two, stuff like that.
Well, it'll be interesting too. Your first home game of the year, and I'm sure everybody will be excited about that, and your kids will be excited about playing in front of the home crowd for the first time this year, right?
Yep, that's always fun. It's always exciting, and so that's certainly something to get up for.
Well, Derek, we're going to let you go because I know you got a big day ahead of you, and we appreciate your time, and we'll hook up with you again next week to recap the Central game and talk about your next opponent.
Sounds great. I can't wait.
Good luck to you, Derek.
Thank you, Ralph.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this week's edition of the Main Street TV Local Sports Break with Coach Derek Hunt, the head football coach of the Maryville Rebels. We talked about the big win over Heritage last week, a 63-14 win at Heritage. Talked about some of the standout players in that game, some of the guys who stood out who stepped up in their first start for Maryville. Lots of young faces, but also lots of veterans that also added a little bit of a balance to that football team against the Heritage Mountaineer team, making their opening game at home last Friday night. Talked about some of the players in that game that stood out for Maryville. Lots of those names and lots of names you'll be hearing more about as the year goes on. And then, of course, we wrapped it up by talking about this week's opponent, the home opener for Maryville against the Knox Central Bobcats, a team that had a big victory themselves on the road at Fulton last week, 53-20. So a good week at the Main Street TV local sports break. Make sure you stay with us. Make sure you check out all our social media platforms and stay with us next week as we recap or reconnect with Coach Derek Hunt to talk about the Central game. For Nathan Miranda, our producer, I'm Ralph Miranda, and thank you for joining us on the Main Street TV Local Sports Break.